Hi, everyone. Welcome back to First Principles. And today we've got Abhishek with us. We'll be discussing how to build a product from scratch. Hi, Abhishek.
Hey, hi Sagar. Thank you for having me here today.
Well, this is great. Abhishek was my mentor in a platform called ADP, which was very helpful for me to figure out what I want to do in the next few chapters in my life. Abhishek, why don't you introduce yourself for the audience just so we have the context?
Yeah, first of all, thank you, Sagar. It's my pleasure. I'm Abhishek, and I'm a product manager in Hewlett Packard Enterprise, and I have experience in product management for last 10 years. I'm also entrepreneur working on new ideas. And when I think about product, it's really about how do we solve pain point that our user or people around the world they face. And my passion is how do I use innovative technology today, machine learning, AI, in helping the world thrive by really helping people solve and through my product the problem areas that they encounter in their daily life.
Okay, that's nice. So that's a nice segue into my first question then. So at the very fundamental level, how would you, and again, you take a wide historical perspective, how would you define a product?
Yeah, it's interesting question, and I've been talking to someone in when they were thinking about their own startup in terms of how they should think about product. For me, product is an idea. It's an idea that helps achieve a target. And when I say it helps achieve a target, the target here is how this product interacts with people and solves the pain point. So if I were to define what is a product, I would say a product is any means through which users get to their target point with the help of certain tools.
With the help of certain tools. So a product, can you say a product is like a way, a vehicle to deliver a service at a much more, let's say, proper rate or much with a higher fidelity than a human being would, because every time there's going to be an interaction with a human being, it's going to be slightly different. Is that a decent sort of way to put it, as opposed to service?
Yeah, I would say that when we think about services, right, the way I think about services is services are meant to complement the product in
Mm,
terms of help people achieve their goal. Product can be generalized, and when we customize a product, that's where the role of service comes into play. So, in different words, we can think about a product can reach many people, but it might
mm.
not solve pain point of each individual. Now, services would come and fine tune or make the product custom so that it's very customized to solve individual needs.
Okay, okay. And in this definition, then, like let's say from a jackhammer to like the latest app, or perhaps a supersonic jet, if we ever get one again, all of those things can be considered products, right? In this wide definition of yours.
That's correct. So I have one anecdote
Hmm.
when I think about product, right? And when I think about the role of product manager and how anyone should think about the product, it goes back to old story of grand grandmom. So if grandmom is having difficulty in walking,
Hmm.
right, that's a pain point in terms of how she can walk properly.
Right.
There can be multiple ways. She can go through surgery, or she may have need of some aid. And as product manager who can understand the right problem statement and come up with a solution, and here the solution can be walking stick. And a product manager would come and it would come with an idea of, okay, we need some walking stick with some height, with some angle shape, made out of proper material so that it's not too heavy, not too light. At the same time, it has the right strength. That would be the product, and here walking stick would be the product. And there is no latest innovative technology or application involved here,
Hmm.
but product definition can go as wild as it can be.
Okay. So there is a certain stage of optimality that one reaches, right? So I don't know if what's the point of putting extra gadgets on a walking stick. It has to serve a particular purpose. It is durable. So even that has a lot of consideration into it. Okay. Um, how in a very, like, let's say somebody has just become a product manager, how would you, if you were to mentor them, like what are the basic things that you will tell them? What's the basic framework to, first on the development side and also on the execution side, and finally when it's also already launched, what's your go-to there?
Yeah, there are three angles, and I do work with many aspiring or new product manager. So there are three angles. The first angle is, which is topmost angle in my mind, is knowing about your customer
Hmm.
and as well as your consumer. And there is nuance between when I use the word customer versus consumer, and depends upon, and I can expand more, depends on the real context we're talking about. So an aspiring or a new product manager or any product manager for that sense, they need to have very deep knowledge about who are the user for them they are solving the problem.
Okay.
And it's very common that people will think, okay, they know how to make things work,
Hmm.
they can create a really cool gadget, but at the end, if it's not solving any customer need, or they don't know who will use them, then they are not designing it optimally, or whatever they have put their effort may not be useful at all.
Hmm.
That's the number one part in terms of you should know who will be the user of your product. The second element is you should have product knowledge. And generally, what I have seen now in enterprises, many new product manager comes and they build on top of product that's already there. They add new features. They think about maturing that product, and sometimes they lack the inherent basic foundational product knowledge in terms of why certain design was chosen at the first instance, why or how different elements of the product interact with each other, and or whether they are confident enough to showcase different feature of the product or answer any questions related to that product. So I bucket all those in terms of product knowledge. So an aspiring product manager or a new product manager, they should have a grasp over their own product, and they should be in depth because they are a single point of contact across different organizations. Like engineers, they would know parts about, or they will have very in-depth knowledge about their parts. But if you think about a team, there are like multiple engineers. They work together to create a product. So product manager should have in-depth knowledge about across the spectrum. So that's the point of contact who'd define what that product is, and who would also promote that product, evangelize that product. The
Okay.
third element which I put is stakeholder management. And product management can't be taught in vacuum or in isolation. There's an element of project management. There's an element of stakeholder management, and by stakeholder, I mean it can vary a lot between customer, consumer, which I already talked about, to marketing, to content creator, and by content creator here I also mean document writer, engineers, designers. There are other influencers inside the company that influence the decision whether the product will get more budget or not. And it's the responsibility of product manager how well they are, like how successful they are in managing different needs of various stakeholder as they think about not just developing the product, but making sure they secure the budget so that their team can thrive.
Okay. I want to get to the product, knowing the product part, right? So let's assume somebody's a product manager. Let's take a big product, like a very complicated one, the Concorde, right? So let's say somebody is a product manager for the Concorde. Now, what kind of knowledge are we expecting from this one person? Because so many verticals, from logistics to materials engineering to software to computing, and then those are the hard sort of engineering issues, and there are the soft engineering issues of marketing, this and that. Is it, how reasonable is it to expect people to know all these areas, or how deep do you want to get? Or maybe I'm just getting all this wrong. So how do you approach it?
Yeah, I have a simple technique for that.
Hmm.
So my recommendation is, if any product manager, when they talk about their product,
Hmm.
they can start with the use case in terms of what that product will solve and who are their customer who would use that product.
Hmm.
Then they can talk about, or they can give a walkthrough of how their customer would use the product, and how that customer will reach to their end state by using the product. And the third element here is if they can talk about what's the basic building block of
Hmm.
that product in
Okay.
terms of what are the different component that has come into play.
Hmm.
And at the last, if they can very concisely talk about how they think their product innovates in the market segment it operates, because whatever product you talk about, there's a very competitive landscape out there.
Hmm.
So if they can very concisely talk about, and when they talk about the market segment, the part about go to market strategy marketing is already covered. I don't expect product manager that they can explain in a very technical
Hmm.
deep sense that why one inside one component, a particular technology was selected over another technology. But when we think about at a broader angle, in terms of different components of the product, they should be very competent to think about why certain architecture decision was taken and not another.
Okay. Okay. So this involves a lot of learning, especially somebody not coming from a traditionally tech background. And again, tech as used some years ago was it meant everything, right? Right from aeronautics to this and that. And nowadays, I actually, a few years ago, I was trying to do a full stack course. Wasn't successful at that. I have an issues with the way it's taught. But anyway, this person had a mechanical engineering background, and he said, I'm not technical. I'm like, what is wrong with you? What do you mean you're not technical? But he just meant computing. So what I'm asking is that where do we learn this? Are there technical architects or people who are seasoned engineers, principal engineers, that they can get that wisdom from, or is it all like on their own?
Yeah, I myself, I have a chemical engineering background,
Mm.
and first job I had was in CPG multinational company.
Right.
And as part of, I was working as a product manager, leading their CPG product. At the same time, I was leading their digital strategy. And at that time, I was also doing some part of the coding. We were thinking about creating predictive model to reduce the innovation time.
Mm.
And my job was pretty technical in terms of had the blend of very detailed knowledge about chemical engineering, process engineering, how it interfaces with models, predictive models, automation. And when I moved to a big tech company, the way we call it tech today, I realized and people start talking, I don't have a tech background. And so I don't think, first of all, the definition of tech is narrow. That and we like when we use tech in a very generic term only related to coding,
Mm.
that's not correct. That's something that we together need to come and uh, and bust that myth. So
Okay.
that's not correct. When I think about how did I learn to be successful in my role, both my previous role, my current role, few things. I think the fundamental, when we think about the fundamental of engineering, that remains the same.
Mm.
When I say about fundamental, it's not just about the coding. In few years, the job of coding may become obsolete
Yeah.
with all the development in machine learning AI. When I think about fundamental, it's about the thinking process. It's about the approach in
Mm.
terms of how anyone can think about a problem statement, how anyone can break that problem statement into chunks, think about prioritizing it, thinking about creating a solution to solve that problem statement in an optimized way.
Mm.
And this in an optimized way is an important element of engineering, because that's the difference I think in my head is between research and engineering. Research tries to come up with a fine-tuned 100% accurate answer, but engineers try to make things work by
Mm.
making some assumptions, and that's the optimization. And when we think about coding, something comes also with the experience. When we think about the architecture, companies may have different architecture. Some may think about using cloud, and the architecture or the API design that is used in cloud will be very different from what we see getting used in on-prem. Thinking about let me give you a very basic example. Like when you think about any architecture in cloud, you'd think about if you're thinking about AWS, you'd build something, storage using S3, database using DynamoDB or something else, compute using EC2, and you
Mm,
think about creating architecture around those building blocks. But when you think about on-prem, you think about Kubernetes. And the construct in Kubernetes is very different from S3, DynamoDB, or EC2. So if you, let's say, if you deep dive too much into Kubernetes, you might not gain transferable skills that you can work well with cloud technology. If you deep dive too much into cloud technology, you may not generalize your skills when you think about Kubernetes.
mm,
Here I talked about digital landscape. This product definition may expand into, let's say, you are a product manager for a delivery system. There you need to have knowledge about the supply chain. So if you're expert in running Kubernetes, then you won't be a product manager that can run well a delivery system. So product manager job is wide. It helps if product manager can understand the art of problem solving and stakeholder management so that they can drive up and create a product that charms everyone.
okay, so let's just double click on both these components then. So how would you explain somebody the art of problem solving? And also, is this like a fundamental math kind of way that this is the way it works and it works for everybody, or it's very subjective? And if it's subjective, then where do you draw the line from actual problem solving to just masquerading?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I'm glad you used this term math. I come from a science and math background, and I deliberately use the word art of problem solving. And when we think math, it's very objective. It's very objective in a sense. You know, 2 plus 2 is equal to 4, but in art, that's not the sense. And product manager blends this two in terms
Mm,
of how you can convert qualitative understanding into quantitative number and make data-driven decision.
okay, okay.
And a way to do that would be through a framework. And I can tell you one recent example. So I was trying to do an analysis of one of the software component that I want to include as part of my bigger software stack. And this component, it had synergy in terms of how this helps in the overall journey for machine learning engineers and data scientists. Now there were five different similar product that was available in the market segment,
Mm,
and I had two choices in front of me. I go very technical, read research paper, understand the performance benchmark of
mm,
each of those five different similar product, and guide my decision based on whatever is performing best.
yeah,
Now, this might look very obvious, like, yeah, this would be the way to go about it. But when we think about the product, it's not only the performance. First, I need to define what are some of the criteria that I will that I will put my decision on. And performance will be one of those many criteria. The other criteria would be how many active community support that component has. Because if I want support in future, then an active community would ensure that I have the right support.
right.
And how do I define now? This community support is a very vague subjective term.
Mm,
So how do I define community support? And this is the part of the art where I would say, okay, I will look at the people who are reviewing this product. How many people are reviewing this product? How many tutor engagement are there for this product? How many GitHub contributors are there in this product? And I will define a metrics for myself in terms of, okay, how will I convert this subjective uh, active community support into a quantitative criteria and then
mm.
use that quantitative criteria to make an informed decision.
Okay, okay, interesting. I'm going to have to absorb that to come up with a secondary question from there. But while I do that, so can you also talk about the second component of stakeholder management? That seems to be very important. You mentioned it twice. And I always thought in my project management times that that's one of the areas, but this is clearly, it's become the most important area. So just maybe shed some light on that.
Yeah, let's take the life of startup founder or product manager
Mm,
who is working in a very small team. And the reason why we'll take this example is we'll see when we add the complexity of big enterprise how stakeholder management becomes a real job, a full-time job in itself for a product manager. So think about a startup co-founder, and you think about, okay, the startup co-founder, who are the stakeholder? The stakeholder are their consumer,
mm,
uh, who are using the product. So the startup co-founder, they will learn the problem pain point that they will learn from the consumer, and they will have designer. So they will work with the designer to create great design. They will have solution architect who will help them create the architecture design in terms of how this architecture will come into place. And then they will have engineering lead who will have a team of engineers that will convert that design into actual product. And then this actual product will be taken for some MVP or market test. Then there will be some research team who will generate the data, who will filter out the data, and then filter it back to product manager. They will prioritize what's working well, what's not working well, and then work again with designer, solution architect, create a product with the help of engineering lead. So
mm.
this is a loop, a small loop, and there are multiple stakeholders that I just talked about.
Yeah.
Now let's introduce, there will be investors. So they need to know what's the update of the development of the product, what's the response from the market. Now they will have their own input based on their experience. They will have some counter team working on the marketing element of it, someone working on the partnership element of it. And now here we're talking about a founder working on one product. Now taking it to enterprise. Now in enterprise, you have one ecosystem of product. You are
Mm,
product manager for one product. And while you follow this process, you have a group lead who is responsible for multiple of such products. So you're not just developing product, you are making sure that product works well in synergy with other product that's there in the ecosystem. And you want to make sure together with the other product, it makes sense for the strategy of the overall company. And sometimes it may mean that you take some tactical decision which for the short term may not go very well with your user base, but on a
yeah.
long term, that makes a whole lot of a great sense. And one example here would be, think about you want to get a direct feedback of your product from your consumer,
Mm,
whether they like the product, yes or no. A very simple feature. But think about your product resides in a big platform, and the platform is trying to come up with a very detailed way to get the customer feedback. But that platform feature will come 6 months down the line.
mm.
So would you still develop this feature of getting the feedback for your product, or will you wait 6 months for platform to develop the product and you can readily use it? And here
Right.
you need to think about the ROI, making sure your stakeholder, who is none of the small circle that I mentioned. It's a completely different product manager or a group lead in a different part of the organization. And you're influencing that stakeholder to ensure you are successful by making your product successful. And that's the small navigation that I'm talking about for a product manager's life in a very ideal world. And when we think about the real world, you would have many new complexity where you will get feedback coming from different part of the organization who think that they know your product better than your consumer.
Mm. And sometimes they might be right.
Yeah,
Sometimes.
depends, right?
Mm. Yeah.
Everyone likes to have opinion on the UX nowadays.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Because it's such a personal thing, right? I mean, it is user experience. And even if you're not a user, it's everybody will have an opinion because there'll be certain things which will be triggering. And just to take a tangent over here, what are your thoughts on UX? Is that also an art or a science? Because there is some science behind it, right? And I think all social sciences really, or even economics, it's downstream of psychology. Like if there is certain stable human nature to be found across, various human beings, of course with all our idiosyncrasies, perhaps we are mapping to that. Because what is an like what are you optimizing for? What's the North Star? Do you have any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I like to say people who know how to design, if they have a basic understanding of tool of how to design UX, they are UX designers. People who know how to design a UX that people love and that looks good,
Hmm.
they are good UX designers.
Okay.
And people who who know the science behind designing good UX, they are best UX designers.
All right.
And it's very easy for you and I to sit and have an opinion. And as I said, like everyone likes to have opinion on UX, and
Yeah.
sometimes they're right. To say, okay, this is well, this is working well, this is not working well. But when we think about what can be the science, can we think about an A/B test that can help us inform our decision by quantitatively assessing whether the design or this flow is working well for user or
Hmm.
not? And if we can quantify our gut or our hypothesis, then I say the best design comes. And when we look at the product that we use in our everyday, I doubt that any of those product has been designed without going through the science.
Okay.
And when we think about the Oquis product that we sometimes use and gets out of touch, those are designed by good UX design.
Okay, okay, okay. I'd love to speak more about this, but I don't want to derail from the main conversation. So in stakeholder management, then are we, because there will be adversarial relationships, somebody's going to want more than others. Now that reminds me just of parliamentary politics, right? And which politics is the art of possible. So I don't really take a negative, cynical view on it, although it can be cynical. But what happens here? Are we trying to create a win-win relationship? Are we doing some kind of compromise where neither that person benefits, not this person benefits? What is the best version of stakeholder management?
I thought about this for quite a long time, and I strongly believe in any conversation, there can only be two outcomes. The
Hmm.
first outcome is win-win, as you said, and the second outcome can be no deal. I can't walk away in conversation by winning and the other person losing, or I'm losing or other person winning.
Yeah, that's a
And
war.
so, yeah, and for me, I try to strike this win-win outcome by starting with or making people or team understand the North Star
Hmm.
and taking some time before getting into conversation to understand other person's point of view. And if I can make sure that I understand other person's point of view, and that person, they don't need to understand my point of view, but if they are successful in understanding the North Star in
Hmm.
terms of why we are having this discussion, we will be in a better position to walk away in win-win situation. And I have experienced multiple tough conversation in terms of people would come with their personal agenda and they would want something. And as I've been working with product, there are many people when we think about solution architect, sales engineer, sales, they are dependent on the product. So
Hmm.
every one of them, they have their own need. They want to make their customer happy. So, and each and every customer, they will have their own custom need. So sales or sales engineer, they'll try to convince, pursue that, okay, this part of the feature that should be prioritized over different part of the feature. There would be different product management team. They would think about why am I developing this feature? This may overlap with some feature that they are developing. Or it may be otherwise. I am working on some feature, they are working on some overlapping feature because they think that's a very active market segment to go after.
Hmm.
In all this conversation, it's very important to start with the objective of the conversation, the North Star, or who we are trying to target with that conversation. And at the end, walk away with a common understanding of why people or why product is taking a point of view. That point of view may not be correct all the time, but it should be logical. That would be
Right.
my take.
Hmm. Okay. Well, I mean, there are instances where the person is acting in bad faith. Now, I do not know what the best way to tackle it is. Like some companies have to use formal authority and take a step. I guess that's just managing by exception. Although I'm not a big fan of that. Okay, how important are internal incentives over here? Now, I assume that the North Star is a way to align all these incentives. So perhaps define the North Star in this context, and then how would you craft and use incentives and disincentives in order to align various stakeholders towards one goal?
Yeah, here I think it's important to define when we think about incentive. And incentive can be of different forms. Like for product manager, incentive can be to use science
Hmm,
to prioritize their product, to have a better understanding of consumer food sales. The incentive would be how many new deals that they have cracked. For support, the incentive can be what can be their turnaround time. And when we think about this incentive, if we are successful in defining those incentive in a very quantitative term, for product manager, if we define the incentive that how many customers or your users do you talk to every week, what's the user adoption of your product? I'm getting very high level North Star metrics for sales. If we think about how many new deals they bring, and then we tie individuals' promotion or individuals' personal incentive back to this wider incentive or the goal that they will achieve. Then I think as an organization, everyone knows that rising up the hierarchy from a CEO point of view, they are looking to increase the sales, increase the gross margin. How will they increase the sale, increase the gross margin? There
hmm,
are five parts of the product. Each product, they will increase the sale, increase the gross margin. How they will increase the sales? By cracking the new deal, by increasing the customer retention. And how will they increase the customer retention? They will make the user experience is out of the mark. How they will make sure if they get the right feedback quantitatively, and the UX team deliver against those goals. The product team create new feature that makes customer love the product more. How will they achieve it? If product manager know their user, and they define new product feature that are adopted by their customer base. So if we define all this in a very structured manner by putting a quantitative number against it, and this is what I have seen most successful enterprises they operate, and some who don't, they try to operate in this manner. This is the way how people from different realms of organization, they come together, thrive towards common success, and are successful
hmm.
in having a proper communication.
Okay, so alignment of incentives based on what the larger incentives for the particular department are, but then the North Star of the product. So how would you define that?
Yeah, I think here, like if we get into the product in itself, right, and how do we define in a general term a North Star of the product as goal?
Hmm,
Uh, First, it starts with the who, like we think about product as someone needs to use the product.
hmm,
So we think about weekly active user or monthly active user or yearly active user, depends upon what's the time frame we are looking at.
right.
Now, the second comes in terms of if an organization is selling a product and we are in this business, then this product should generate direct or indirect revenue. So when we think about direct revenue, how different users they contribute, they generate the value out of the product. That value reflects in the revenue that product generates. Sometimes product managers do work in product that helps promote other product. So here it's important. And think about ads, right? It's very hard to say how will you provide a revenue number to the ad campaign. So here the concept of attributable revenue comes into play.
Hmm.
So for any product feature or any product that you're working on that may not have any direct revenue stream, how can you attribute some part of the revenue that's coming from your product? And there are many economic analysis that are available that product manager can do to come to that number.
Okay.
That would be the high level North Star. And then a product manager needs to dive into those North Star in terms of when they think about active user, it may happen that their active users are increasing, but they're not doing a great job because they are having a high churn for the product. So it may not be sustainable for them to keep on increasing the newer user adoption because of the great marketing that they're doing,
Hmm.
but the product is not working that well. So product managers do get down into the nitty-gritties of those metrics to understand their user behavior.
Or to understand if the metrics are correctly crafted or not, or are we measuring the right things, and how are we measuring them? How much assumptions, how many assumptions are going there? Okay, I have a question, but I'm gonna have to I'm gonna need some time to frame it. Now, I have a provocative, or I guess radical hypothesis. I It's a strong opinion, but I don't hold it like strongly. So it's a weakly held strong opinion. I think
That's an interesting way to say, weakly held strong opinion.
Yeah, I got that from that all-in podcast guy, then Chamat Papatia. So I like that. But anyway, he was saying, not he was saying, uh, I think quantification efforts or trying to essentially get metrics, I think it's a way of busy work, which means that your intuitions, or because ultimately I think it really comes from, like, it's very difficult for me to really understand like how ideas come from, like the benzene ring, very famously that guy saw the coiled snake, right? No amount of math equations got that right. So sometimes it just comes in a form of a form or whatever. Now, once that's there, so a few people have that, and then additional people come in, and then there's a bit of like politicking going on. Everybody wants to secure a job or whatever. So they what are the metrics? What's this? What's that? Okay, but why are we measuring it, right? So like, let's say you take a maths test and you get 60%, right? It had a very wide sort of subject, like the syllabus was big, only 10 questions came in, and four questions came in from one chapter or whatever that you were not suitable, and now you're labeled as a bad math student. Now, every time you're measuring something, by definition, you are ignoring other things. And by definition, you are ignoring the nuance. I do understand that if you don't measure anything, you won't progress. So my argument is not don't measure. But we need much more humility when we are crafting metrics, crafting incentives. So like, let's say weekly active users. I'd like a little note by the co-founder or the whoever the product manager to tell me why does he think that this is a useful metric. And then if I am working downstream from there, as a thinking person, not rather than just following orders, it's going to make more sense to me. It's a very long-winded way of saying how much of this focus on metrics is essentially a veiled form of imposter syndrome, or just pure corruption or whatever, evasion, that you're not focusing on things and you purposefully focusing on semantics, like all of these people, politicians do, whatever the term in the US is, where I'm forgetting the term, but they just keep talking, right? So filibuster, right? So how do you distinguish that?
See, I think you mentioned two things, and I consider those two as two distinct things. The first thing
Okay.
you said is about the accuracy of the data, and
Mm.
you give this math student example, and I call that, and that's a very standard thing. It's like the sample that you selected, it's representative enough or not, and
Yes.
and that's a science question, and I think that's very super important because if you're
Okay.
not measuring against the correct base, or if you are having the wrong sample size, then you are making incorrect decision, justifying yourself with the data that is not representative. So it's
Yeah.
about same thing as saying 71% of all the stats in this world, no one knows how it came from. And even the 71%, no one knows how that came from. So, so it's the same thing. Like you are making round and round and round,
Yeah.
without making any sense. The second thing that you said makes sense, which is about you should know the why behind the metrics. If
Mm.
I, as product manager, am measuring weekly active user, and you, as product manager, you are measuring weekly active user, our product are very different. For me, it might make sense to measure weekly active user. For you, it might not make the sense for measuring weekly active user. And I will give you one very simple example. In as part of my role, I was measuring this weekly active user. My organization was measuring weekly active user, but the product I was working on was used even by top enterprises. Mostly they will use it once a month. The
Mm-hmm.
design was that is supposed to be used as once a month. And if they're using once weekly or once daily, then they are not using it correctly. So if I give weekly active user metrics, it might not be relevant there.
Yeah.
So as a product manager, we said like, okay, we want to measure monthly active user. We don't want to measure weekly active user because it makes sense. So it really depends on the product, the users, and why it makes sense. The third element here is that you touched upon loosely. If I as product manager, if I don't measure, if I don't have a number, then I can go rogue.
Yeah.
I can think about, I can dream, I can think about, okay, this is the way to go about it. And an organization, they put great responsibility on product manager. And for product manager, it's very easy. Even for me, it's very easy to develop bias in my own thinking. So how do I negate that bias as I think about the product? Because I come from one particular culture, and humans by nature, they have their own bias. They, because they are diverse, they have their own opinion, and that biasness or opinion may affect the product that I'm designing, because the product I'm designing will not be used by, if I were to use loosely used term, a particularly specific cohort
Mm.
of people that I kept in mind because of my bias. But if I bring that numbers into play, uh, then then this bias may go away. And again, one simple example. I was talking about this one component that I was having five similar product market segment market like five similar product in the market. I was trying to do analysis in terms of which one to choose. One of those five product, let's say product number two, everyone inside my organization, they were talking about, or they were using that product number two as part of the solution that we were sharing with the customer. And so in my mind, it was very obvious that, hey, like if people are using product number two, then product number two, we should simply use product number two for our product. And that's the
Yeah.
bias I
Mm.
had. But when I went into trying to convert that bias or my subjective understanding into quantitative understanding, that I said, for example, look for GitHub stars they have, go for Twitter engagement that that product had. To my surprise, that product was famous, popular inside my organization, but not so much outside my organization. So that gave a reality check to my bias and said,
Mm.
okay, now product two and product one are similar in terms of their support. So I don't have any reason to favor product two because it's just popular inside my organization, but not so much popular outside my organization if my decision making is based on the popularity of the product. So this is where numbers comes in defense. And if someone asks me as part of my stakeholder management, hey Abhi, why did you select product three or product two and product one? I have a very reasoned argument in terms of saying, hey, I did XYZ analysis. Based on that analysis, product three outperformed product two and one. If if the product 3 is wrong, it's not wrong because I thought product 3 was best. It's wrong because the analysis that I did gave that product 3. So if there's a question mark is on the analysis. So from next time onward, the learning would be how do we perfect or enhance the analysis. So it's not people, it's process.
Okay, I'm not sure if I agree with that because yes, process is important in order to operationalize something, scale something. But I don't know by what process did Ford Model T came in, right? There was no process before it was there. I don't know by what process the Wright brothers basically just took off. When Lord Kelvin a few years ago, very famous physicist, Kelvin's kid named after him, there will never be a heavier than air whatever flight, right? New York Times said that. I think you need to be a bit of a madman to really go against the grain and a force of nature for that kind of innovation. When Apple came in and he just sorry, Steve Jobs came back to Apple, he was CEO, so he could do it. But generally speaking, he chopped off so many product lines. He's like, we'll focus on this. this is what we'll do. BlackBerry was rocking at that time. People would have said, no matter, every analysis would have been like, nah, bad investment. He's like, screw it. This is what we're doing. We go down with the ship, or we go down with the ship. So I guess my thing is, if you can incentivize product managers, if you want that kind of innovation, share revenue with them. That will really, really, put everything, like they get real skin in the game. So so what you're describing for me is probably great for iterations, or perhaps not to see, okay, let's say going from step 1 to step 8, but step 0 to step 1. Any thoughts on that?
See, I think what we're talking about here is selection bias. And what I
Selection bias. Okay.
and what we're talking about selection bias is when you
Hmm.
when you bring the example of Apple, Steve Jobs, or any other company,
Yeah.
BlackBerry, that were successful. We only look at things that are successful.
Yeah.
We don't look at things or the numbers that became unsuccessful
Hmm.
by following that, if I were to loosely use this madman theory.
Yeah.
And if we were to look things in terms of people who followed process, how
Hmm.
many of that was successful? So it's a typical. I were to use my MB hat. You take more risk, you
Yes.
get more return.
Yes.
So
Yes.
should you target high return by taking excessive risk, or should you optimize getting high risk optimized return? So if you make a simple equation, return over risk, would you try to increase that, or would you only try to increase return by taking unlimited amount of risk? And that's a very important element. When we think about any new big innovation, you
Hmm.
know, there are very few, and if you think the companies that exist today,
Hmm.
there are very few that who came into being uh, just by thinking about, okay, something is working and we should build it. There's a famous analogy. People say, okay, Apple fell, Newton noticed, and that's how he discovered this law of gravity. But before Newton, do you think none of like people on this earth, they saw Apple falling?
Oh, of course. Yeah.
But why didn't they come up with theory? Because Newton knew how to convert what he saw into a scientific reasoning, and he came up with that scientific reasoning.
Right.
So he used this process of converting his physical experience into scientific imagery.
Hmm.
Same thing with Steve Jobs. Two things: they were lucky, but at the same time they were great in converting their experience into product by using science rather than only thinking in vacuum.
Okay. So
And
yeah.
yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
and,
Okay.
and and sorry, and even if you look at look at all the great founders of our time, right? uh, None of them would say, they might behave or they might create the perception that they are acting by making decision abruptly,
Mm-hmm.
but they are not. I've analyzed a few key decisions of our times, even recent times, with uh, with top tech companies. In media, the perception would be they are taking decision rationally. They are showing themselves as unpredictable.
Hmm.
But when you go to their decisions that they have made, those were perfectly justified for making any right business decision,
Okay.
be it be Twitter or anything else.
Okay, so what, I guess we're saying the same thing then, because it's not the madman theory, it's the apparent madman theory. And as you said, it's not like product management, it's an art, right? So with art, because it's not a perfect math equation, and assuming perfect math equations exist, there is room for certain heterodox ideas in order for them to be converted into the science. And people who perhaps are inclined to heavy risk taking and of course heavy reward seeking, they would be more comfortable with that kind of leadership. Not abrupt, but definitely like, a force of nature kind of leadership versus just, tepid process, just like, for me, I mean, I just see a petty bureaucrat when you describe that. But there is obviously the Newton example, there is point to it because all of those things can be internalized And you don't need to follow the process in order to evade doing anything, but you can internalize the process so much that it just becomes natural. I guess that's how we can reconcile these two. Yeah, okay, okay,
No,
great.
makes sense. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. Okay. So moving on from this, then you talked about the execution portion where you're doing the scaling, you're doing this, you're managing the engineers, I mean, of course, all those roles come in, but then, so is a project manager also coming in a product management situation? And if yes, what is the project manager focused at? And what's the product manager focused at?
Yeah, it's good question, and very talking again from a very enterprise angle.
Hmm.
And when I think about product management and project management, I see those roles as slightly overlapping role.
Right.
And the reason why I say that is when I think about the success of the product or success of the product manager as a consequence of it, execution becomes the key in terms of whether whatever product manager uh, provided a guidance or provided some sort of understanding to their investor, to their consumer, to their stakeholder, whether they can deliver it on time in full.
Hmm.
And one way to do that is making sure there is a process built around the execution plan.
Hmm.
And when I say process built around execution plan, and there are few things in software development industry now with last 20-25 years, how to run this Scrum meeting, how to make sure so that when there are multiple people working together, they follow a path that helps everyone contribute in a real time basis.
Yeah.
Now, if you think about how people can work together in a very disciplined format, if everyone is responsible and they behave in a very logical way, you don't need project manager. So you have a product manager, they define things, people work based on the expectation, and they deliver on time. But again, we all are humans. And as humans, we don't take all the decision in a very logical, in a very computer-oriented way. We bring some idiosyncrasy with us. And project manager helps in making sure the program schedule is on time. And
Hmm.
if there is any opportunity to strengthen the communication, to make sure everyone is following and syncing so that everyone has the same understanding. Because in real world, not everything is ideal. So project manager is responsible by making sure uh, each of the stakeholder or each of the engineering counterparties, they come on the same page, and project manager delivers the entire project on time. And this project manager is not just relevant to software industry. Think
Yeah.
about building things, think about construction. So you have different people, and while you would expect there would be an ideal flow of information, but project manager can ensure that in real world they communicate properly, and they create milestones that people follow and achieve the goal.
So, in a very rough analogy, can we say that product manager is a CEO and the product manager is a COO?
Uh, I would love to use that analogy, and I see from the angle you bring this CEO and CEO comparison. So if
Yeah.
I were to take the ratio of CEO to CO, I would say, yeah, that's the same ratio as product manager to project manager.
Right.
One thing that I'm not very comfortable is equating product manager to CEO.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you that. Why not? Yeah.
And yeah, and in my book, I started with that paragraph that people often use this analogy. And I see that as an abuse to product manager. And the reason is
Oh, okay.
and the reason is very simple. See, people report to CEO. And if people report to CEO, they do things that CEO tells them to do.
Right.
And if they don't do things, CEO will replace them. And they will find someone who will do things as CEO instruct them to do.
Right.
In case of product manager, if I were to design a system, and that's the system that I have seen across many companies, no one reports to product manager. Engineers and engineering lead, they are a different organization. Product manager, they work with engineering lead designers as their stakeholder, not as someone who reports to them. So the job of product manager, it's tough, in a sense that they need to influence those stakeholders to agree to their product vision and their strategy and go about executing it. But for CEO, that's not the challenge. Uh, Product manager, while they own the vision and the mission of their product, but it needs to align well with the strategy of the organization. For CEO, that's partly true. They own the vision and mission of their company, but that may be the only vision and mission for that company if there are no different portfolio companies reporting to same private equity or in that form of structure.
Okay, but that could be an easy problem to solve. I mean, if you have a matrix-like structure where the product manager instead of the project manager is actually the reporting manager for the folks in the team. Now they can have secondary managers, like the functional managers are secondary. Part of the problem is solved over there, don't you think?
There's a reason why no one reports or engineering leads, they don't report to product manager. And the reason is you want to, so I started by saying enterprises or organization, they put great responsibility on product manager because
Yeah,
they are face of the product. They take decision on real-time basis.
right.
Uh, and those decisions really impact the revenue of the product.
Hmm.
Now, if you think everyone reports to product manager, the accountability is lost. So no one questions product manager. So if engineering lead they report to me, they will do whatever I tell them without questioning the rationale behind why I am asking them to do certain things.
Hmm.
If designers report to me, they will do exactly what I tell them. So the product will become reflection of my thinking rather than my customer's thinking. So by having the accountability of someone asking them the question instead of simply following the march order, helps in creating the product that solves the real pain point instead of just becoming reflection of product manager's own thought.
I hear you. Yeah, yeah, that is definitely a case. But again, I mean, there are trade-offs everywhere. So
Yes.
I'm just thinking there could be probably, and maybe you can write in your next book if there is a better way to come up with this, because it just seems like it's like you are asking the military to go and, secure something for you. But then the instructions to the military are you can't carry weapons, you need to be naked. And every time somebody hits at you, you need to take that beating. I don't know how you're going to succeed with that kind of orders to the military, right? So the military needs to be aggressive. And I don't have a solution to it, but there has to be a better reporting mechanism. Um, do you think the current one that we have is working fine?
I think, again, as you said, right, there's always an opportunity to improve. I think it also depends on what the product you're talking about, what's
Hmm.
the stage of the product, and if you're thinking about a very mature product, and when I say mature product, think about a product that has a very big user base, millions of users using the product actively every day, tied with revenue. There, you'd have some risk aversion, so you'd
Hmm.
not want product manager to act irrationally.
Yeah, be a
Uh,
maverick.
but when you think about in your example becoming 0 to 1, you'd want to cut down on the time it takes for having discussion, and you'd want to take risk. And that goes by the theory like you want to be very lean at the same time you want to experiment, fail sooner than later. And in that sense, having a different organizational structure may help. But
Hmm.
again, the question is how do you do trade-off and what part of the organization do you work, what part of the product you operate, and what's the phase of your product, company, or organization?
Okay. 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 So in the last section of the podcast, I'm going to ask you some silly questions, some naive questions, purposefully so that I can try and extract some more fundamental wisdom. So you said in here, the product management has like three major scales. So one was stakeholder management, one was the execution. I'm interested in the ideation part. The execution part, there is Scrum, there's Agile, and of course, there is some ideation happening there as well. It's not entirely separate, but primarily for the ideation of the product, do we have good heuristics, or is it still, just throw things on the wall and see what comes out?
Okay, how would you rate the innovation skills or the program of any of the top tech companies? So you'd agree with me, they are quite innovative. That's
Hmm.
why they are, or you won't agree with me there.
They were. I don't think my Apple whatever 15 is any better than Apple 11. They were innovative, but by that, I mean, I don't know. I probably have high expectations. I want a hologram next time in my next iPhone. So yeah, I'd say innovation generally happens. I think, and this is not a rule, but this is a sociological observation. When you become big and complacent, you just want to get the, there's a you just want to like get the spiel running. But then, because like Google, I think they created the transformers, right? And it was OpenAI who had to release ChatGPT, and then Google is going crazy. So that's where I'm coming from. But I see for the most part, they are pretty innovative. Obviously, otherwise they wouldn't have gotten there.
I'm glad you used this Google OpenAI example. And I will tell you, when you when you're not innovative, right? And when you are at the top and you are not innovative, that's a great example how companies outside can innovate and displace you
Yeah.
or challenge you.
Yeah.
So the key to remain at top is to be innovative.
Hmm.
And you proved my point that if you think about top tech companies, if they were not innovative or if they are not innovative, there are many companies that are in the line that will replace them. OpenAI just did, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
So based on this argument, like we can presume that many of the companies that we see are innovative in
Yeah.
different, right?
Innovative enough. Yeah.
Yeah. And now when we think about innovation, what is innovation? For me, and when you think about Wright brothers, right, and you provide all the examples, Steve Jobs, each one of them when they created the innovation, they were solving a pain point, right? They were simply not doing for the sake of entertainment or just for enjoying. And even if
Just
they're
a
doing for
hobby.
the sake of
Yeah.
entertainment,
Yeah.
that would again be innovative because that would have added in some greater length of entertainment.
Yeah.
Now, when I bring back the lens, right, I define innovation as something which really helps me achieve something which I am not able to do it now, which solves my pain point. Uber did it. Every company that we think about, they did solve something.
Yeah.
And even today, they are solving their new product. When you think about the new UX, they're trying to solve something. If if anyone is not solving pain point, they will not be in the business, and that's what innovation is. Now, when you think from an enterprise lens, Google is a great example. Uh, there's this cannibalization that may happen because of the innovation, and that may suppress the innovation, that may suppress the innovation which would have made things radically different. And that's the part any big enterprises they need to be wary of.
Hmm.
And there are models in which organization they create a new term, intrapreneur, in
Hmm.
which they will create a small subpart of the organization. They will keep all the liberty. They will appoint, let's say, one internal CEO for that organization, and they will say, okay, create anything that you want,
Yes.
and one that becomes right, then they will think about integrating inside the organization. So innovation in that lens is happening across the spectrum, and innovation can't happen in vacuum that all of a sudden I will have eureka moment
Yeah.
and things will work or go the way I want. I
Yeah.
need to be very scientific in understanding the pain point, coming with a list of priority, going out to the market with part of the product, getting the feedback, fine tuning it, perfecting the product, and making it available to customer or user who says yes, now I can use this product that helps me solve the problem I was facing, and I can continue using it for some time.
Yeah. Yeah. I totally agree with that. Yes. I will also say that, once I was trying to figure out how to write better, and like a very generic advice was that when you're writing, depending on whatever your skill levels and priors are, just be crazy. Just go ahead, do it, right? But when you're editing, be really, really, really methodical. So that's like it's more work, but it works because then you are not trying to merge the artistic, creative, chaotic kind of part of you and the rationalistic, very scientific part of you. You're not trying to merge them in like a weird center. You're doing this and you're doing this, and then the combination of it cancels the muck out, and I think the best part remains. I don't know how scientific this theory is, but it seems to work.
This is very
So,
scientific to me.
okay, 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 fair enough. Okay. So the next question is the product life cycle, right? Now, we should have discussed that in the beginning, but that was too boring for me to talk about then now. But in this context, can you describe your understanding of the product life cycle, specifically the end? Because everything has an end. And how do we extend that end or whatever? So how do you get understand that?
Yeah, if we start from the end, right, the challenging part of any product life cycle is you'd have users who are using the product, and
Hmm,
there'd always be some part of the user who'd love your product because they have started identifying themselves with the product, and it's hard to disappoint people, and sometimes organization do bear a big cost of not sunsetting any particular product or product feature, and they go extra mile in terms of carrying over the cost just to support a small part of the user base. What I have seen working well, and that's purely coming from economics, is first organizations should think why customers they are still using the product, and they should think about how they can provide a better experience or a seamless path for them to start using the new feature. Second is, even if that does not work, think about the economic value that
hmm,
those users are getting because of using some particular feature, and the cost that organization is having just to support that feature. Create uh, create the whole value, the economic value plus the cost, and then think about how they can distribute the overall value by helping them covering some part of the subscription cost for some other product, because for them, for the companies, they will save the cost. So product sunsetting is a difficult topic, is a chapter in itself,
hmm,
in terms of how to manage expectation, how to make sure you don't lose customer loyalty, and that's the part where product managers or people who want to talk about the product, they don't cover in details. But that's an important element if you think from an enterprise point of view, who have the same customer using different product, because their experiences will get defined by what they have seen in other product, and they have sunsetted, the organization have sunsetted, and how well organization supported them to move to a different part.
hmm. Okay, okay. And okay, so I should have researched this, and I'm sorry I did not. You said you have a book. So what can you describe that book and what's it about?
Yeah, my book is on product management. The name of the book is Product Mastery, a master class in product management.
Okay,
And I have read, I've seen many product management book. None of them, uh, I would say 80% of the book that exists today in the market, they talk about project management
right.
or software development, not the
Yeah,
product management part of it.
yeah.
So I took a first principle approach to write something about the product management. And I didn't see any book in the market that talked about implementing machine learning or AI from a product management sense. So
Hmm,
nowadays, every product that we use has some part of machine learning or AI, and it's different from software development. Software development is static. Machine learning models are more dynamic.
hmm.
It requires more care, more nurture while it is still being used. It might develop its own bias. You need a system in place, and as product manager, you are responsible to make sure your product is well used and is well perceived by different market segments. So my book tries to empower aspiring product manager, new product manager, or product manager who wants to learn more about how to use AI ML inside their organization, equipped with certain tools so that they can identify, scope, and implement strategies that can elevate their own product knowledge and the product that they are working on.
And is this like if somebody does not have priors in product management, are they also good candidates to read this?
Yeah, so this is targeted for aspiring product manager. So
Okay.
product manager, they will get 101 in
Hmm,
terms of basic product management. This book touches very lightly on the project management part of it. So if you want to tune yourself or learn the project management skills, this might not be the best book, but if you want to think about ideation, think about prioritization, think about stakeholder management, think about product knowledge, think about uh, identifying the right strategy, think about whether your organization or product need machine learning AI in the first place, think about, okay, how to operationalize it.
Yeah.
This book might be a good fit.
Okay, great. I'm going to put this in my backlog. Buy it pretty soon. So available on Amazon, yeah?
Yeah, it's available on Amazon worldwide.
Perfect. So as the last question, since you already are an author, now if you were tasked a very different task, right? So if you were asked to make a children's book for, I don't know, 10-year-olds and describe to them in very simple, non-nuanced, but whatever, something that not is what is not going to alienate them in terms of how to build a product from scratch. So what are your steps? So what would you do? Like with all pictures and all that?
Yeah, first thing I will write there is talk to people for whom you are developing the product. So first thing would be talk and understand, right? Second thing would be think about what can be the different way they can achieve uh, they can they can achieve or what they are doing it today.
Okay.
So the picture would be how are they walking
Hmm.
or how are they going from point A to point B. Now the third thing would be what can be a better way of doing it. A picture here would be a rollerblade, helicopter, aeroplane, bicycle.
Hmm.
And then the second last part here would be how do I build these pieces together? So if I put rollerblade, should I use metal? Should I use wood? Should I use plastic?
Hmm.
What should I use it? And the last part would be before putting a person on top of the rollerblade and letting them go, provide them right support that if rollerblade break in between, that person does not fall and hurt themselves. And
Perfect.
I will repeat this process all over again. So it would be a
Right.
success.
Perfect. This is great. Okay. So are you are also a mentor, and I'm assuming you have multiple ventures apart from your current job. So how do people get in touch with you? What's the best way?
See, I'm pretty available over LinkedIn, so I request people to reach out to me, connect me over LinkedIn, and we can mutually find some time. I'm also using this platform ADP, so if someone wants to book my calendar, sometimes slots are available on ADP, and I do these activities pro bono as a way of giving back. I learned a lot as part of my journey coming from a very small part of rural India. People across different part of my life, they went beyond, they helped me. It's my small way of giving it back to society and be useful to anyone who needs my help.
Perfect. This is great. Well, any last words from you, Abhishek, before we end?
No, I see this product management space now with this technical product management space is very exciting journey. I feel very excited, passionate working in this space. This comes with a big responsibility. So it's very important for anyone not to lose integrity in this limelight. So I request every product manager, aspiring product manager, to think about the ethics, think about the value, think about the integrity, and not lose them as they think about developing a very responsible product for the user.
Very well said. Perfect. All right, folks. I'll see you in the next episode. Bye bye.
Thank you very much for having me, Sagar, once again.